Hi, this is Dave and Jim with today's One Rep Constructive Conversation. Let's get into today's subject. All right, today's topic is contracts. It's getting the right contract with the right terms and all the right language is incredibly important to YMCA capital projects. They make all the difference. So let's start out with guaranteed maximum price contracts.
Okay.
Is that like an industry standard? Are those just the ones I used? Are there different? Are there I don't know, 2 or 3 different kinds of that capital projects use for these general contracts with different things in them? I mean, could you go into that a little bit?
Sure. Well, oftentimes you want to utilize the standardized agreements established by the AIA. So there's, and within that AIA organization, there are a multitude of approaches to the project that sometimes are driven by the funding sources or the expectations of leadership. In a design bid build approach, you find yourself often migrating to the stipulated sum agreement, which is a more simplified form, but there's also less ability to capitalize on the approach to the project through a stipulated sum agreement. Whereas you mentioned the GMP, guarantee maximum price. Guarantee maximum price is an excellent format, from my experience, to best capitalize on the ownership's investment, because you have a greater opportunity to work with the contractor in the expenditures of the project, and recognizing how that monies are best invested through the project's development. And in construction, there's contingencies within that avoid many of the gaps that occur between the contractor and their vendors, but not between the contractor and the project. There are still change orders in that process. And that's why it's so important that prior to establishing that agreement, we talked about this before, but it's about the negotiations that occur upon receipt of bids, and even more importantly, the information that's presented to the participating contractors in compiling that presentation. It all starts back at how accurate is the information we're presenting, and it leads to the successful implementation of the contract itself, and referencing all of that in the interim. So the guaranteed maximum contract format also has key clauses within them called the shared savings clause, for example. Oftentimes you negotiate that if the contractual contingencies within are not expended, then everybody benefits. So we want to work together through the project so that you can get that cash back at the end. Let's say there's a $100,000 contingency, only $50,000 is spent. If you establish a shared savings clause of 50-50, there's a reduction in your contract amount at the project's conclusion of less $25,000 that can go towards operations, can go towards the FF&E, can go towards the more grand signage that goes above the door. So there's a number of more manageable benefits through the guaranteed maximum price, but you also want to ensure that your professionals preparing that information I said earlier also understand that that is the approach we're taking, and so that the information is supportive of that contract format.
And so the inverse of the shared savings is the penalty. Like, do a lot of these have penalty clauses or not really?
Well, they call it liquidated damages.
Right.
So yes, liquidated damages. Again, with our support of the project's development, we shouldn't be concerned about liquidated. And liquidated damages inherently create an adversarial environment before you've even started the project. I've often argued against the implementation of liquidated damages because it goes both ways,
Right.
right? The contractor could be the cause for the delay,
Right.
but so can we.
Right. Right.
So can an unforeseen condition.
Right.
And next thing, and as a result, we are in turn compensating the contractor
Right.
for damages we're causing because of delays in a funding source, for example,
Right.
and their approval of a change order. A great example.
Right.
Some funding sources take weeks to approve change orders.
Right. Right.
Well, that delays the project, and then next thing you know, we're now additionally compensating the contractor because of this liquidated damage clause. So we do our best. Again, it's about the quality of the contractors we solicit for the project.
Right.
We shouldn't be concerned with liquidated damages if we have the right guys participating.
And then retainage, right? That's always something like,
Sure.
the project that the electrician has to get everything done. It's got to be inspected. We've got to do a walkthrough before they get that final little bit paid to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
But the owner's rep is responsible for making sure that those are done and that we get the green light to the CFO and she cuts the check for the last little bit at the end. I mean, there's more to it than that.
Well,
But that's how I always said, okay, well, that's the retainage part of that is usually in those contracts, right? Or-
Sure. Retainage typically is 10% of the contract amount, right?
Yeah, right,
But when we get to 50% of the project,
right,
and everything's going well,
right,
everybody's singing from the same sheet music.
right,
We often find terms in the contract that reduce the retainage to 5%.
right. At
Right.
a certain point, then
Yep.
you hit.
At that 50% cash value of the contract,
Right.
you'll see that reduction in the
Okay.
retainage, which is, again, a support of the relationship.
Right, it's a friendly
yeah.
term.
And not only that, but they have, for example, their site contractor, the demolition contractor,
Right.
who's been a part of the project 14 months ago.
Right.
They need to get their cash flowing, so that reduction helps those guys in the
Right.
front end. But in the back end, what we want to be mindful of is the incomplete tasks, right? You may have occupancy because the inspector says, yes, you may wander the halls, but this light switch is crooked or there's a hump in the floor.
Right.
Well, there's values to that work if that contractor walks away.
Right.
And what we need to be mindful of is that we're retaining that money's necessary to complete that
Yeah,
work.
to fix whatever the problem
Sure,
is.
if
Right.
in fact, heaven forbid, the contractor were to walk away from the project.
Right.
So yes, we need to be mindful of that, and that's part of our responsibility as owner's representative, is to ensure that those funds remain available to the YMCA.
Well, that's our One Rep Constructive Conversation for today. Thanks for watching. One Rep, we want to bring what we've learned in Pennsylvania to the whole rest of the country. We've had extensive experience doing YMCA capital projects here over the last 25 years, and we've had great success minimizing changes that YMCAs have had to make, compromises. We're minimizing the compromises that YMCAs have to make. And part of that, of course, is we want to minimize the unnecessary charges, and what that winds up being a lot of times is an increase in the mortgage amount, right? The debt load. And we want to make sure your Y is successful and your project is successful. So if you'd like more information about One Rep, you could visit us on our website. We have a Facebook page. We're on LinkedIn. Please give Jim or I a call anytime. We're happy to come out to your Y and talk to you about your project or have a free Zoom consultation to talk about your project. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.